Chapter 40:139. They looked at Du Fan and Lung Shuang in front of them in shock. After being stunned for a while, they suddenly regained their senses and shouted, "How dare you kill an elder of the black market? You guys, how dare you?" The old man who had been pushed back stood aside with an ashen face. His hands under his sleeves were tightly clenched into fists, and his heart was filled with anger. In front of so many people, he had been pushed back by a member of the younger generation. Furthermore, the other party had killed an elder of the black market. He had wanted to save someone, but he had been unable to do so and could only watch helplessly as the elder was killed in front of him. This was not only because the other party had died, but also because the elder had been killed in front of him. It was like a slap to his face, making him feel very embarrassed. "I don't care how high your cultivation level is. Today, all of you will die here." As the old man spoke, his gloomy voice carried a hint of viciousness. In the next moment, he made his move, gathering wind in his palm and attacking Du Fan. His move was vicious and carried a terrifying killing intent. "Kill them." As the old man made his move, he glanced coldly at the two elders standing behind him. His meaning was that he would deal with Du Fan and the two elders would deal with Lung Shuang. As the old man's voice fell, the two elders regained their senses and attacked Lung Shuang, as well as Yi Feifei, who was being supported by her. However, just as the two of them rushed forward, Fingjiu, who was sitting in the corner below the stage, called out softly, "Cloud-devouring beasts." Two rays of light flashed out, and the two ferocious cloud-devouring beasts roared angrily. They leapt towards the stage and raised their sharp claws, carrying the coercion of a sacred beast as they attacked the two elders. Roar! Roar! The two cloud-devouring beasts roared angrily. Their roars were loud and clear, carrying a powerful coercion that shook the eardrums of the crowd. Their powerful and robust physiques shocked the crowd in the auction house, and they could not help but cry out in alarm. "Heavens! That's a cloud-devouring beast. That's a sacred beast-level cloud-devouring beast." Hiss! Two cloud-devouring beasts have appeared at once. Where did they come from? When the people who were rushing towards the auction house saw the two cloud-devouring beasts leaping onto the auction stage, their eyes widened in shock and disbelief. They might still see divine beasts, but sacred beasts were extremely rare. And here, there were actually two of them. After recovering from their shock, some of the more attentive people couldn't help but glance at the corner of the auction house. When they saw the red-clothed lady slowly standing up from her seat, their hearts couldn't help but stagnate. The man holding the fan was the woman's attendant, and the two cloud-devouring beasts seemed to have appeared after the woman called out. She had such a powerful servant, and two powerful cloud-swallowing beasts protecting her. Who was this woman? Ah! The two elders on the stage did not expect two ferocious beasts to pounce towards them. They did not have time to withdraw their attacks, nor did they have time to retreat. They could only see the two cloud-devouring beasts roaring angrily and clawing at them with their sharp claws. Instantly, the sound of their robes being torn, accompanied by the sound of flesh being cut, entered their ears. The pain that came from their bodies made them cry out in agony. They quickly retreated and looked in horror at the two cloud-devouring beasts that had stopped in front of the woman in black. Chapter 40:140. Puffed. In that split second of distraction, a powerful gust of wind hit his chest and sent him flying back several meters. He snapped back to his senses and saw that the man holding the fan was staring at him coldly. The man's eyes were filled with contempt and indifference. He felt humiliated and his chi and blood surged, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Whoever kills them will be heavily rewarded by the black market. In the future, they will be honored guests of the black market. The old man shouted in a low voice and looked at the crowd who had retreated to the entrance of the auction house. There were all sorts of people amongst these people, and there were naturally many experts amongst them. However, they had all chosen to stand by and watch at this moment. If they were to lend a hand, then how could a mere few people and two cloud-devouring divine beasts be a match for them? Because of the old man's words, the crowd who had retreated could not help but feel tempted. If they could become honored guests of the black market, it would be a good thing. Furthermore, the black market would owe them a favor. If anything happened in the future, the black market would also help them. Thinking of this, some people clenched their fists and prepared to step forward. However, at that moment, they saw the woman in red slowly walk forward. Her gentle voice echoed in everyone's ears. Today, none of the people in charge of the black market will survive. If anyone is not afraid of death, feel free to step forward. I don't mind sending him on his way. The voice was slow and indifferent. It was so calm that there was no fluctuation in it. It was as if she was just saying the most ordinary words. However, it was this woman in red slow words that made those who wanted to take a step forward stop in their tracks. For some reason, when the voice was heard, it was so gentle, but it exploded in their hearts like thunder. They trembled with fear and did not dare to take the risk. "Who are you people?" the old man shouted in a low voice. Feng Jiu walked to the front. Lung Shuang carried the unconscious Yi Feifei and leaped down to Feng Jiu's side. Looking at Yi Feifei's limp hand, Feng Jiu reached out and touched it. Her eyes turned cold. Her hand had been twisted and broken, and even the bones had been displaced. This kind of twist was not as simple as breaking the bones. If she had not grasped the technique well during the treatment, and the bones were not connected properly, her hand might have been slightly twisted because of the bones in the future, and her flexibility would not be as natural as before. "How dare you touch my people without knowing who we are?" Feng Jiu's voice had turned cold. She looked up at the old man and sneered. She said word by word, "The price for touching my people is death." Just as Feng Jiu finished speaking, Du Fan attacked the old man. Not to mention that his master had already given the order to kill. Even if he hadn't, he would still kill these people. Du Fan's attack changed, and he released his spiritual energy and pressure. As soon as he released his pressure, the old man's face turned pale, and his body trembled slightly. This person's strength was so strong. If it was the previous attack, he could still barely block it. But now that Du Fan's attack had changed, he did not even have the chance to fight back. This was because his entire person was suppressed by a strong force. Even if it was only for a moment, this moment was enough to determine his life and death. Xiao.
Ah.
Chapter 41. Hiss. Seeing this scene, the people at the main entrance of the auction house sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces turning pale. Their bodies involuntarily shrank back, trying to hide their presence. Another elder had died, and it was the head of the 4 great elders. This was really going to be a big deal. Among the cultivators who were shrinking back towards the main entrance of the auction house, there were 1 or 2 who had seen Feng Jiu, and the rest on the second floor of the medicinal herbs company. Seeing this scene, they were so shocked that they were dumbfounded, unable to speak for a long while. Who could tell them that what they saw was not real? Just a few of them actually killed 2 elders of the black market, and even had 2 sacred beasts following them. This was simply too heaven-defying. They had originally thought that the girl who had been sold to the black market would at most be auctioned off, and if they wanted to get her back, they could only bid for her at a high price. Who would have thought that these 2 or 3 people would actually use such a simple and crude method to directly attack the black market, and the people of the black market were actually not their match? Who could tell them where on earth did these abnormally powerful people come from? Just as they were in a daze, Du Fan shattered the inner elixir of the elder, and his entire body fell backwards, his body twitching a few times, blood flowing out of his mouth, as he fell into a pool of blood and breathed his last breath. After killing the elder, Du Fan turned to look at the 2 people who were being attacked by the cloud-swallowing beast. The 2 of them were already covered with cuts and bruises, and as they dodged the attacks of the cloud-swallowing beast, they looked at the dead elder on the ground. Because of the shock and fear in their hearts, they revealed many flaws in their defenses. Hence, the cloud-swallowing beast raised its sharp claws and tore off one of the people's arms. Hiss! A shrill sound rang out, and the thick smell of blood filled the air. One of them screamed, his face pale as he gritted his teeth and fled backwards. Seeing this, the other person also sent out a palm strike, to block the cloud-swallowing beast's pursuit, and fled backwards as well. As for the guards and shadow guards in the open and in the dark, they had already quietly dispersed. Even the elders were not their match. How would they dare to send themselves to their doorstep to seek death? In the end, they still valued their own lives more. "Master, wait here," Du Fan said, and his figure flashed, chasing after the two people. If the guards and secret guards escaped, then so be it. But these 4 elders and the steward must die. This black market must disappear from the city tonight. "Lung Shuang, help her sit here," Fengjie said, motioning for her to help Yi Feifei sit down. "Yes," Lung Shuang responded and helped Yi Feifei to her seat while he supported her from the side. Fengjie took out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into her mouth, then pinched her injong point. Not long after, he saw Yi Feifei slowly wake up. "Master?" Yi Feifei slowly recovered. He felt a warmth in his chest, as if something was flowing. It was very comfortable. The pain also disappeared. However, when he woke up, the pain in his arm gradually became clearer. Chapter 41-42. Wrapping the cloth around her neck and holding her arms in front of her chest, he said, "That's all for now. Don't move it." "Thank you, Master." Yi Feifei looked at Fengjie and lowered her head, saying softly, "Master, I've caused trouble for you." Fengjie smiled, not minding it. "I can go anywhere, but I can't avoid trouble. Today's matter is just a small matter. In the future, when you follow me for a long time, you will know that sometimes, even if we don't look for trouble, trouble will come knocking on our door." While they were talking in front, the cultivators who had retreated to the door were dumbfounded. They were actually chatting here? Didn't they see the bloody corpses on the stage? Didn't they see the 2 cloud-swallowing beasts sitting on the stage, eyeing them covetously? Not long after, Du Fan came back, holding one of the elders in his hand. But at this time, he was covered in injuries and his face was pale. He brought him in front of Fengjie, saying, "Master, I'll keep this person. I plan to let him bring us to open the black market storehouse." Fengjie raised her eyebrows, saying, "You go with him." Fengjie indicated that she did not plan to go herself. "Yes," Du Fan replied, seeing that she did not object. He left with the elder. A black market that was about to disappear. They naturally had to take the things inside, otherwise, wouldn't it be convenient for others? Those who heard their words all looked at each other. Some were tempted, but the moment they thought about it, they dismissed it. These few people were very strong. If they did not make a move, they would be fine, but once they made a move, they could kill the other party. Such opponents were too scary. They did not dare to take the risk, especially when they did not even know their origins. After Du Fan left, Fengjie looked around, seeing that the guards and shadow guards had already fled, and those who came to participate in the auction had retreated to the main door. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at them, saying, "Why aren't you leaving? What are you standing there for?" Hearing this, they were stunned and somewhat in disbelief. We can leave?" Fengjie smiled and said, "I don't care who you are. Since you are not my enemy and did not oppose me, you can naturally leave." She paused and looked at the surprised expressions on their faces. She smiled and said, "However, you should know what you can say and what you can't say." Hearing this, everyone was shocked and immediately replied, we know. Let's go." She glanced at them indifferently before withdrawing her gaze. With a wave of her sleeve, the 2 cloud-swallowing beasts returned to her space. Seeing this, those people let out sighs of relief. They looked at each other, then one of them took out a sword and slashed the door open. As soon as the door was opened, everyone rushed out and left the place. After waiting for about half an hour, Du Fan returned, looking at Fengjie and the rest, saying, "Master, I took everything in their storeroom and also killed that person." None of the people in this black market were good people who knew how many people who were sold here had died in their hands or were sold by them. Such people, even if they died 100 times, it would not be enough. "Let's go," Fengjie said, standing up. Chapter 41-43. Yi Feifei glanced at him and nodded. "Yes, I can." She had injured her hand. not her leg. Furthermore, her master had bandaged it and given her an elixir, so it would not be a problem for her to walk back. I'll support you, Lung Shuang said as he supported her from the side. Thank you. Yi Feifei thanked her as she spoke. She used her strength to support her and followed her master out. They returned to the inn under the cover of the night. After entering the inn, they asked the waiter to bring hot water. Feng Jiu asked Lung Shuang to cut off Yi Feifei's sleeve. Because her arm was broken, if she took off her clothes, she would definitely twist her arm again. Therefore, cutting off her sleeve was the most appropriate choice. Hiss! Yi Feifei gasped. Because the bandages that secured her arm were untied, her arm hung down. She broke out in a cold sweat from the pain. Your arm is swollen. Lung Shuang frowned when he saw that Yi Feifei's arm was unbelievably red and swollen. The bone was twisted and shifted. It was not treated in time, so it is natural that it is red and swollen. Feng Jiu rolled up her sleeve as he spoke. He looked at Lung Shuang and then at Yi Feifei. Finally, he said, I need to help you reconnect the bone. Lung Shuang alone is not enough. We need Du Fan to come in and help. Yi Feifei was stunned. She gritted her teeth and said, Okay. If Feng Jiu had been alone, she would not have thought much of exposing her arm. However, since it was Yi Feifei, it was better to let her know first so that she would not feel uncomfortable. I'll call him. As Lung Shuang spoke, she walked out and called Du Fan, who was outside. Not long after, the two of them walked in. When Du Fan saw that Yi Feifei was sitting on the chair, her dress was still intact, but one of her arms was exposed without any concealment. The woman's snow-white skin was reflected in his eyes, causing his eyes to flicker slightly. He looked down and saw that her arm was unbelievably red and swollen. He gathered his thoughts and walked forward. Master, what do you need me to do? I need to reconnect Feifei's bone. Stand behind her and hold her upper arm with both hands to prevent her from twisting and struggling from the pain, Feng Jiu said and motioned for him to come forward. Yes. Du Fan responded and walked to stand behind Yi Feifei. Since he had to hold her upper arm with both hands, he had to hold her in his arms. Therefore, he reached out and wrapped his arms around her entire body. He held her upper arm with both hands. The man's scent assaulted Yi Feifei's nose, causing her ears to turn red. She felt her entire body heating up, and her whole body was uncomfortable. Especially when her bare arms were hugged by his hands, she couldn't help but lower her eyes. She told herself over and over in her heart that Du Fan was helping her with the bone setting. Even if he hugged her like this, it was no big deal. Feng Jiu nodded when he saw that Yi Feifei's posture was correct. He carefully lifted Yi Feifei's arm and said to Lung Shuang, Hold her here. Yes. Lung Shuang stepped forward and held Yi Feifei's hand as instructed, keeping it straight. Yi Feifei could not help but feel nervous when they held her entire arm. She could not help but grit her teeth when she felt the pain in her arm. She tried her best not to move. Chapter 41-44. Yi Feifei's face grew paler and paler. She didn't make a sound. She only clenched her teeth, afraid that she would cry out if she let go of her hand. Yi Feifei's face grew paler and paler. She didn't make a sound. She only clenched her teeth, afraid that she would cry out if she let go. Because of the fracture of her arm, in addition to the dislocation of the bone, her arm was also red and swollen due to the bleeding and coagulated blood. Feng Jiu helped her set the bone back and carefully touched the bone. After making sure that the bone had been set in its original position, he held her hand with one hand and pulled it slightly to straighten and level her hand. Lung Shuang, hold here and don't move. Don't pull your arm. Just hold it like this and keep it flat. Feng Jiu instructed and let Lung Shuang take over her hand. Lung Shuang responded and did as she said. He watched as his master carefully touched Yi Feifei's arm. Then, he gathered spiritual power in his palm and spread the blood away from her arm. Du Fan looked at Yi Feifei and saw that she was clenching her teeth so hard that her lips were bleeding, but she did not make a sound. However, her other hand was tightly gripping the corner of her clothes. Because she was trying to control herself, The veins on her hand were bulging. It was obvious how much pain she was enduring. Fengjiu applied the ointment that he had prepared on the side onto Yi Feifei's arm. Then, he used a bamboo board to fix her arm and bandaged it carefully. He did not raise his head and said, "I'll fix this arm for you. Don't move it in case it moves again." He did not hear any sound for a while. He raised his head and saw that she had fainted from the pain. Her small face was pale. He said to Du Fan, "Carry her to the bed. Be careful, don't hurt her hand." "Okay." Du Fan responded and watched as Fengjiu finished bandaging her arm. Then, he carefully carried Yi Feifei to the bed. Fengjiu walked to the table, wrote a prescription, and handed it to Lung Shuang. "Go buy 3 sets of medicine and boil it for her, one at a time." "Yes," Lung Shuang replied. He took the prescription and walked out. After being busy for most of the night, Fengjiu let out a sigh of relief. He glanced at Yi Feifei on the bed and said to Du Fan, "Go wash up and rest. I'll keep an eye on things here." Du Fan nodded and left. He did not return to his room, but went downstairs to instruct the waiter to prepare some dishes and rice before returning to his room to wash up. After taking a bath and changing into a new set of clothes, he walked out of the room and was greeted by the waiter. "Young master, the food is ready. Would you like to have it sent to your room or eat on the first floor?" The waiter asked with a smile. Du Fan paused, thought for a moment, and said, "Let's eat on the first floor. Wait for us to go downstairs before serving the food, so it won't get cold." As he spoke, he walked to Fengjiu's room and knocked on the door. "Master." Fengjiu opened the door and looked at Du Fan, asking, "What's wrong? You haven't had dinner yet." "I had the waiter prepare the food on the first floor." As Du Fan spoke, he glanced at the room and said, "She'll be fine resting in this inn. Master, you should go downstairs and eat first." Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded. "All right." He closed the door and went downstairs with him. When the waiter saw them go downstairs, he went to the kitchen to serve the food and wine. After serving the food, he left. Chapter 41:45. Fengjiu took a sip of his wine and smiled. "If we can't leave, then we'll just have to wait for them to come knocking on our door. The guards at the black market were not killed. They will go back and report. As for the owner of the black market, let's see if he has a death wish." She paused for a moment, then said to Du Fan, "Did you ask the kitchen to prepare something for Feifei to eat? She should wake up in the middle of the night. She will need to drink her medicine later, so we have to let her eat something." "Yes, I asked the waiter to ask the kitchen to prepare some porridge." Du Fan replied. Fengjiu smiled. "You're so careful. You know what to do even without me telling you." As he spoke, he looked at him teasingly, then picked up his chopsticks and ate some food. Du Fan heard this and smiled. "I've been by master's side for many years. I know what to do." With just one look, he knew what his master's teasing gaze meant. It seemed that his master liked to watch a good show. Yes, watch the show between him and Yi Feifei. "Master." Lung Shuang came back with the medicine. Seeing them on the first floor, she called out. Du Fan stood up and said, "I'll go prepare the porridge. You accompany master to eat." "No need, I'll go," Lung Shuang said. Du Fan stepped forward and took the medicine, saying, "I've already eaten. You haven't eaten yet. Sit down and accompany master to eat. The food was just served not long ago." As soon as his voice fell, he didn't wait for her to say anything and walked towards the kitchen. "Let him do as he pleases. Sit down and eat." Fengjiu gestured. Lung Shuang sat down and said, "Master, the people outside are already spreading the news about the black market. There are also many people watching outside the inn. Don't worry about them." Fengjiu did not care. Seeing this, Lung Shuang did not say anything else, but picked up the rice and ate. In the middle of the night, Yi Feifei woke up. Lung Shuang brought her porridge. After she ate, he brought her a bowl of medicine and said, "Drink this medicine later." Yi Feifei looked at the medicine on the side. It was black and smelled strongly of medicine. Seeing that the medicine was still hot, she was not in a hurry to drink it. Instead, she leaned against the headboard. Fainting was one thing, but now that she woke up, She felt a sharp pain in her arm. Even though it was the second half of the night, she couldn't sleep at all. Lung Shuang, will the people from the black market take revenge if we stay here overnight? Yi Feifei asked worriedly. Master is here. Don't worry. Lung Shuang slept in his clothes on the soft couch and said, Don't forget to drink the medicine. It can help you recover. Besides, Du Fan made it for you. Hearing this, Yi Feifei was stunned. She wanted to ask more, but saw that Lung Shuang had already closed his eyes and was asleep. So, she did not disturb him. She looked at the steaming medicine and thought of Lung Shuang's words. Her heart skipped a beat. When the medicine was not so hot, she picked it up with her uninjured hand, held her breath and drank it in one gulp. Because the 4 elders of the black market were killed in one night, the news spread quietly even though Fingjiu had ordered them not to spread it. Almost all the powers in the city knew about this shocking incident that night. They also knew that the people who destroyed the black market were staying in the inn in the city and had not left. Of course, some people kept an eye on the inn, but no one dared to act rashly. Chapter 41-46. But what? Another person asked, his gaze landing on him. But this cloud-swallowing beast, and hearing your description, I have a faint guess. The middle-aged man said, his face deep in thought. Hearing this, the few of them looked at each other, saying, If you have something to say, just say it. That middle-aged man looked at them, took a deep breath, and slowly said, You should have heard of the ghost Dr. Fingjiu, right? When these words came out, the few of them couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock. You mean, they're the ghost Dr. Fingjiu's people? The middle-aged man shook his head. No, but after hearing what you said, I feel that the ghost Dr. Fingjiu is here, and he is the master of those people you mentioned, the beautiful woman in red. Hiss! The few of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Today, a few of their old friends were sitting down and discussing, guessing that these people might be aristocratic figures from someplace. But they didn't expect to hear him say that the person who destroyed the black market was the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu's people. This can't be right. Our place is considered a more remote town. Why would the ghost Dr. Fingjiu come here? Moreover, there aren't many people by his side, just 2 or 3 people, and that little girl who was caught by the black market is also very weak. There's no way she could be the ghost Dr. Fingjiu's people. They were shocked and found it inconceivable. That legendary figure, that person who caused such a huge commotion in this world, actually came to their city? They knew that the ruler of this world was one of the generals under the ghost Dr. Fingjiu. That kind of person, in their eyes, was too high to reach, too far to reach, so it was impossible for him to appear in front of them. It was also because of this, when they heard that the ghost Dr. Fingjiu was here, their first reaction was disbelief. This was really too hard to believe. If it wasn't for them, who do you think would be able to destroy those people from the black market with just a few people? Who would have the guts to stay in an inn in the city as if nothing had happened after destroying the black market? The middle-aged man glanced at them and sighed. Fortunately, you didn't get involved in this matter at that time. Hearing this, the few of them were shocked. Some of them had wanted to step out and help after hearing the conditions offered by the black market elder, but now they were scared. A chill rose from the soles of their feet and went straight to their hearts, making them shiver involuntarily. The air seemed to have frozen, and there was no sound or movement for a long time. They sat there quietly, trying to calm their emotions. After a while, someone asked, Do you think the owner of the black market has guessed their identities? Hearing this, they paused, looked at each other, and said, It's possible. They've probably guessed it, so there's no movement. Otherwise, how could it be so quiet at this time, and nothing has happened? The middle-aged man said, The black market's power is quite big, but if the ghost Dr. Fingjiu wants to destroy it, it's really a simple matter. The few of them talked, and waited until dawn to see if there was any movement in the city. Chapter 41-47. The owner of the black market, who had brought the guests and the gifts, looked uneasy and nervous. When he heard the news, he had ordered his men to investigate their backgrounds. He did not expect them to be the ghost Dr. Fingjiu himself. He pondered for an entire night before deciding to make a personal trip to the inn to ask for forgiveness. When he arrived at the entrance of the inn, he personally asked, "Have the guests here woken up?" The innkeeper was a little flustered when he saw such a large group of guests. However, he calmed down when he heard the owner's question. The other party addressed the guests upstairs as distinguished guests, so they shouldn't make things difficult for them. Therefore, after a while, he said respectfully, "Those guests went to bed very late last night, so they haven't woken up yet." The owner of the black market paused and said, "All right then. I will wait here for them to wake up." As he spoke, he gestured for his men to wait outside while he led a middle-aged man into the inn and sat down in a corner. The innkeeper did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly served them tea before retreating. The commotion downstairs did not alarm Fengjiu and the rest. Only Leng Shuang had woken up early to help Yi Feifei brew medicine. He saw the owner of the black market sitting on the first floor. When the innkeeper saw Leng Shuang, he went over to the owner of the black market and said, "This lady works for the lady in red." The owner of the black market, who was looking at Leng Shuang and secretly guessing, immediately stood up and hurriedly called out, "Miss Leng Shuang." Leng Shuang stopped in his tracks and looked at the middle-aged man who was walking over. The owner of the black market cupped his hands and said, "I am Chu Xiong, the owner of the black market. When I found out that one of my subordinates had offended you, I am here to apologize." Hearing this, Leng Shuang glanced at him and said, "My master hasn't woken up yet." With that, she walked towards the kitchen. Chu Xiong paused and looked at the innkeeper beside him. He asked, "Why is she in the kitchen?" This young lady was brewing medicine for another young lady upstairs. When that young lady came back, she was injured quite badly. Her hand was twisted and displaced. The shopkeeper said softly. Chu Xiong paused. Thinking of what his subordinates had done, he sighed helplessly. He had heard that the ghost Dr. Fengjiu was extremely protective of his own people. His subordinate had broken her hand and injured her. He was afraid that she would not let it go so easily. Thinking about how the black market storehouse had been emptied, he smiled bitterly to himself. This time, not only did many of his subordinates die, the treasures in the storehouse were also taken away. This was a double loss. If it was someone else, he would definitely take it back. However, this person was the ghost Dr. Fengjiu, so he could only swallow this loss. He returned to the table in the corner and sat down to wait. When it was close to noon, he saw a woman in red come down from the second floor while yawning. Looking at the beautiful woman in red, he immediately stood up nervously. Was this the ghost, Dr. Fengjiu? Was this the legendary ghost, Dr. Fengjiu? She was truly, indescribably beautiful and peerless. The moment he saw her, he realized that the most attractive thing about her was not her beautiful face, but the noble aura that emanated from her body. The noble aura that she exuded from her every movement carried a hint of casualness and laziness. It was inexplicably hard for people to shift their gazes away. Chapter 41-48. He bowed deeply, raising his hands high before slowly kneeling down. His forehead rested on his hands, and he did not get up. Fengjiu had just woken up, and even though she had washed up, her face was still sleepy. Her hand that was yawning paused, and her clear eyes narrowed. She lazily leaned against the railing of the stairs, looking at the middle-aged man kneeling on the ground. When the middle-aged man behind saw his master bow so deeply, he quickly stepped forward and respectfully knelt behind her. "Chu Xiong?" she lazily asked, her mind spinning. Looking at the person kneeling by the stairs, she was just about to ask who he was, when she saw Du Fan walk out from the room and stand behind her. "Master, it's the master of the black market," Du Fan said, gently fanning himself with the fan in his hand, his gaze looking at the person kneeling below. "Oh, the master of the black market?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows, looked at the person below, and asked, "What are you doing here?" As she spoke, she slowly walked down step by step. Hearing her words, Chu Xiong panicked and said, "Ghost Doctor, I'm here to ask for forgiveness. I didn't discipline my subordinates well. Please forgive me, Ghost Doctor." Fengjiu walked past him and sat down at a table on the first floor. She slowly said, "It's normal for the underground black market to do some shady business, but this kind of kidnapping and trading of women is not something I'm used to seeing, especially when you're touching my people." Chu Xiong's forehead was covered in cold sweat. When he heard her words, he felt a strong pressure pressing down on him, as if as long as she willed it, he would be crushed to death here. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He held his breath, his heart in his throat. Even if the other party spoke casually, he was still scared out of his wits. He immediately said, "Ghost Doctor, please investigate. This matter, I really didn't know about it. In the future, I will discipline my subordinates well, and they won't do it again." The shopkeeper brought the waiter to personally serve them food and wine, then respectfully retreated, not daring to look at the two people still kneeling on the ground. Fengjiu poured a cup of wine and took a sip. After a while, she said, "Go back. Discipline your subordinates well. If they do it again, it's one thing if I don't know, but if I know, I won't let you off so easily like this time." Yes, thank you, Ghost Doctor. I will discipline my subordinates well, and they won't do it again," he hurriedly said. When he felt the pressure covering him disappear from the top of his head, he took a deep breath and hurriedly stood up to leave. He didn't dare to stay any longer, and quickly left with his people. Du Fan sat down at the side and asked, "Master, did you spare their lives because you emptied the black market storehouse?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "That was only one of the reasons. Secondly, he didn't kill them again, and even came to ask for forgiveness. No matter what his intentions were, since he dared to come and ask for forgiveness, then his crime doesn't warrant death. Moreover, we don't have any deep hatred with him. Killing the 4 elders under him and emptying his black market storehouse can be considered teaching him a lesson. After all these years, she had seen too many things, and her temperament had changed. Sometimes there were some things or some people that didn't warrant death. She was willing to spare their lives and give them a chance." Hearing this, Du Fan smiled. At least he knows his place. Chapter 41-49. Okay. Du Fan replied and asked the waiter to call Lung Shuang and Yi Feifei. After they finished eating, they continued on their journey in the spirit deer carriage. The people in the city could not help but sigh in relief when they saw them leave in the spirit deer carriage. They finally left. God knows how worried they were. What would happen to them here? Yi Feifei was sitting in the carriage with medicine still tied to her arm. Her complexion was much better than yesterday, and she was in good spirits. Fengjiu sat by the window with one hand on the window and looked at the scenery outside. He said, "It's been some time since we left. I wonder how the 2 little guys are doing? Do they miss me?" Lung Shuang heard and said, "The 2 little masters are under the care of the Yama Lord. They will be fine. Master, you don't have to worry. Master, if you miss the little masters, then we can go back as soon as we find the ancient 9-tailed fox." Yi Feifei said and looked at Fengjiu. "Master, how long will it take for us to reach the forest? We won't be there so soon." "It's not a short journey," Fengjiu said and looked at Yi Feifei. "Come, give me your hand." Hearing this, Yi Feifei stretched out his hand and heard her say, "Not this hand, the injured hand." "Oh." Yi Feifei turned her body slightly and carefully untied the hand that was wrapped around her neck. She saw her master dismantle the things on her hand, including the bamboo board and the cloth that was tied around it. The blood clots on her arm had disappeared. It was still red and swollen, but it was not as scary as it was last night. Seeing this, she said, "Master, the medicine is very good. I also drank the medicine made by Lung Shuang. My hand doesn't hurt as much. It should be better in a few days." Fengjiu smiled and said, "Last night, your arm was filled with blood and dislocated bones. Today, I'll use the power of the Azure Lotus to help you heal your bones quickly." As she spoke, she gathered spiritual energy in her palms and drew out the power of the green lotus from her body. As she held onto Yi Feifei's arm, specks of green light seeped into her arm. The redness and swelling on her arm gradually disappeared. Under the skin, the broken bones were also healing at an extremely fast speed. Yi Feifei blinked her eyes in shock. She watched as the swelling on her arm disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Furthermore, she could even feel that the broken bones in her arm were healing. The pain in her bones was disappearing bit by bit. After a while, Fengjie withdrew his hand and said to Yi Feifei, "Try clenching your fist to test your strength."
Oh.
Yi Feifei responded in a daze and clenched his fist. He saw that his fist, which was originally unable to be clenched, was clenched tightly. The blood clots that had flowed down to his palm due to the blockage had also returned to normal due to his master's treatment.
It's
really healed? She blinked her eyes in disbelief and turned her hand to look left and right. Finally, she said happily, "Master, it's really healed. My hand is really healed. The power of the Azure Lotus can even heal internal injuries. It's just broken bones. As long as the blood clots are dealt with and the bones are fixed, the power of the Azure Lotus can naturally heal them." Fengjie smiled and looked at her and said, "You are the weakest. This time, when you go to the Azure Demon Forest, you must step up your training." Chapter 4150. Seeing her full of confidence, Fengjie smiled and took out a book and handed it to her. There is a set of body movements in this book. You should memorize it first and then practice it. In the future, even if you can't beat them, you can escape first.
Thank you, Master.
Yi Feifei said happily and took the book with both hands and started to read. Lung Shuang looked at her sleeveless hand and then looked at Yi Feifei. Seeing that she seemed to have forgotten about it, he asked, "Do you want to change your clothes first?" Yi Feifei froze for a moment and followed Lung Shuang's gaze. Only then did he remember that because her hand was injured, this half of her sleeve was torn. Now that her hand had recovered, naturally, she could put on her clothes. So he smiled embarrassedly. "I forgot for a moment. Well, I'll change it now." She did as she said and changed her clothes in the spirit deer carriage. Fengjie and Lung Shuang looked at each other and smiled. This little girl was also careless. She changed her clothes as she wished. Wasn't she worried that Du Fan would suddenly open the carriage door and come in? Of course, Du Fan wouldn't come in because he heard the voices inside. At this time, he knew that Yi Feifei's hand was healed. He smiled and drove the spirit deer carriage forward. Half a month later, they arrived at a city and prepared to enter the Cyan Devil Forest. In half a month's time, Yi Feifei's body movements had become very skillful. In addition to Du Fan teaching her, Fengjie would occasionally give her 1 or 2 pointers. Perhaps it was because of getting along with each other, Du Fan and Yi Feifei were getting along better and better. They no longer bickered as they used to. "Master, Cyan Devil City is the closest city to the Cyan Devil Forest. This place is relatively prosperous, and there are all kinds of people in the city. It's also more complicated. Since we plan to enter the Cyan Devil Forest, let's first prepare in Cyan Devil City and prepare everything we need before we set off." Du Fan drove the spirit deer carriage in and said to Fengjie, who was sitting in the carriage, "And let's find an inn to stay at. Let's take a stroll around the city and stay there for a day or 2. We'll set off when we're refreshed," Fengjie said as he lifted the curtain to look outside. It was just as they had heard when they came. The city was bustling, but it was also filled with all sorts of people. Because there were many mercenaries who accepted missions, and there were also people who did not follow their families who came out to train, the inns in the city could be said to be extremely popular all year round. They went to 3 or 4 inns, but did not find any empty rooms. In the end, they asked around and found out that there was an inn in the city that was twice as expensive as an ordinary inn. However, there were rooms available all year round, and they were also extremely high class. Thus, the few of them asked for directions and went to that inn. "Guests, are you here to stay?" The waiter came up to them and asked. He sized them up, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. These people's appearances were too outstanding. Even though he was a waiter who worked in the inn and had seen many outstanding young masters and young ladies from aristocratic families, he had rarely seen anyone who looked like them. However, he was after all a waiter who had seen a lot of the world. He quickly collected his thoughts and enthusiastically led the way for them. Ladies and gentlemen, why don't you sit down and have a cup of tea and something to eat? Du Fan handed the deer carriage to another waiter outside and followed them inside. When he saw inside, he couldn't help but smile. Chapter 41:51. Master, let's sit down and rest for a while, Du Fan said to Fengjiu. All right. Fengjiu agreed and followed the waiter to an empty table. After sitting down, Du Fan looked at the waiter and said, Waiter, prepare 3 rooms for us. All right, waiter. Please follow me to the counter to pay for the rooms, the waiter said as he poured tea for them. Then, he gestured for them to follow him to the counter. Fengjiu and the others sat down while Du Fan followed the waiter to settle the procedures. After paying for the rooms, he came back and saw that many people sitting on the first floor drinking tea were looking at them. He walked to the table and sat down. He said to Fengjiu, Master, do you want to rest first? No need. After sitting for a while and drinking tea, I'll walk around the city with Leng Shuang and the others, Fengjiu said, and took a sip of tea. Then he looked at Du Fan and said with a smile, Do you want to buy anything? You can also walk around and see if there's anything you want to buy. Hearing this, Du Fan nodded. All right, then I won't be with you later. Fengjiu smiled and said, This Azure Demon City is close to the Azure Demon Forest. Many rogue cultivators will bring their prey or spiritual herbs here to sell. There should be a lot of people here. We'll rest here for 2 days and look around and ask for information.
Yes,
the others replied. They knew that the information she was talking about was about the ancient 9-tailed fox spirit. They rested in the inn for a while. After chatting and drinking a few cups of tea, Du Fan handed the small wooden sign for the room to Fengjiu. Master, this room is yours. If you come back first, you can find your room by following this wooden sign. Then, he handed another one to Leng Shuang. You and Fei Fei will share a room. These 3 rooms are connected. Master will take the room in the middle.
Yes,
Fengjiu responded and put away the small wooden tablet. Then he stood up and said, Let's go. Let's go out for a walk. Yi Feifei followed Fengjiu with anticipation and joy. She looked at Du Fan and said, Brother Du will go first. Be careful when you're alone. Along the way, the 2 of them got along better and better. She also obediently called him Big Brother Du after all. He had taken care of her along the way. Yes, follow Master and Leng Shuang closely. Don't run around by yourself, Du Fan instructed. Let's go, Fengjiu said as she walked out. Leng Shuang and Yi Feifei followed behind her. Du Fan watched the 3 of them leave. He sat for a while and drank the tea in his cup. Then, he walked out of the inn and went in another direction. Seeing them leave, a man in brocade clothes in the inn said, Who are those people? Their temperament is really outstanding. Haha, Brother Wan, are you trying to say that those girls are very beautiful? A man sitting next to him laughed and said, However, those people are really very dazzling. Especially that woman in red. She is really a peerless beauty. Seeing that the 4 of them came here, and their strength is unfathomable. Not to mention, Brother Wan, I am also curious about their background. Chapter 41:52. A middle-aged man said. As soon as he finished speaking, no one else said anything. This was because they had observed the people who had come in. From their auras, they knew that they were people who had been in positions of power for a long time. Moreover, their cultivations were unfathomable. Even some of the people with extremely high cultivations were unable to see through their cultivations. Of course, among the 4 people, there was a woman whose cultivation was relatively low, and they could tell at a glance. However, with the 3 people with unfathomable strength, everyone naturally ignored the weak woman. At this moment, a young girl at another table was curious. She could not help but ask the old man next to her in a small voice, Fourth Grandpa, are those people really powerful? One of them is on par with you. The other 3 are unfathomable, the old man in gray said as he stroked his beard thoughtfully. After a pause, He looked at the people at the same table and said, "Go back and tell the people below not to cause trouble casually. More importantly, they are not to offend those people." Hearing this, the middle-aged men at the same table were slightly surprised. They looked at each other but did not say anything. They only nodded. "All right, we understand." Fengjiu and the others did not pay much attention to the people and matters in the inn. At this moment, they were strolling along the street towards the central trading area. Because it was a major trading city, there was a large area designated for rogue cultivators to sell things. Yi Feifei walked along the main street until he arrived at the trading area. Looking at the things on the ground, Yi Feifei's eyes lit up.
So this is how they sell things.
Just a square piece of cloth will do. If we close the stall, we can just roll up the cloth and leave. That's convenient. She walked to a small stall and squatted down to look. Seeing that the stall was filled with small magic tools and formations, she could not help but look around and buy a few small magic tools to keep. "You guys walk around. I'll go see if there are any medicinal herbs," Fengjiu said, gesturing for Leng Shuang and Yi Feifei to go together. "Master, where can we find you later?" Yi Feifei hurriedly asked. Fengjiu looked around and pointed at a tea stall not far away. "If you don't see me, just wait for me there." They followed her hand and nodded. "Okay." Watching her leave, Yi Feifei pulled Leng Shuang to another stall selling daggers and said, "Leng Shuang, can you help me see which dagger is good? I want to buy one for self-defense." Leng Shuang squatted down to take a look and said, "Nothing much." Her words were straightforward, but the rogue cultivator selling daggers was displeased. "Miss, you're wrong. The daggers in my stall are all good daggers that can cut through iron like mud, and they were all refined by me. Are they not good?" "It's a good knife, but it's not up to my standards." Leng Shuang's voice was calm and indifferent. She glanced at Yi Feifei and said, "Let's look at the others." "Oh, okay." When Yi Feifei heard her say that it was not good, she did not look anymore. Instead, she put down the dagger and stood up to leave with her. Chapter 4153. From his point of view, the coldness wasn't just an aura, but more of a murderous intent. He didn't dare to provoke such a person. Leng Shuang and Yi Feifei walked forward together. Looking at the stalls around them, Leng Shuang said, "It's hard to find a good dagger in a place like this." "It's okay. If we find something good, we'll buy it. If not, then forget it." Yi Feifei smiled and asked, "Sister Leng Shuang, is there anything you want to buy?" Leng Shuang shook his head.
No.
"I want to buy anything interesting. Even if I don't need it, I'll just keep it," Yi Feifei said with a smile. "So, I'm very happy to be here. There are many things sold here that I've never seen before." As she was speaking, she suddenly stopped in her tracks and looked at a cage placed on a stall not far away. Inside the cage were a dozen mice the size of an egg. Seeing that she stopped, Leng Shuang followed her gaze and saw that in addition to the gray little spirit mouse, there was also a white little spirit mouse. There were about 15 or 16 of them, all of which were the size of eggs. "That's a mouse," Leng Shuang said with a frown. Even if it was a spirit mouse, it was still a mouse in her eyes. Hearing this, Yi Feifei couldn't help but chuckle. "It's not a mouse, it's a spirit mouse. Come, let's go take a look." As he said this, he pulled her forward. "Miss, do you want to buy a spirit mouse? This is a spirit mouse from the Azure Devil Forest. Although it's small now, it'll grow bigger after a while. When that time comes, it can burrow into the ground or—" Before the cultivator finished speaking, Yi Feifei pointed at the white one and said, "Take this white one out for me to see." "Haha, miss, you have good taste. This is the only white spirit mouse in my nest." As the cultivator spoke, he took out the white little spirit mouse and tied its feet with a rope before handing it to Yi Feifei. "Miss, look. Tying it up like this won't let it escape. Although this spirit mouse is small, its reaction is very sensitive and its movements are very fast. If we don't pay attention, we won't let it escape." "Will it bite?" Yi Feifei asked. Looking at the squeaking little spirit mouse, he did not reach out to take it. No, it won't bite. It's a vegetarian and doesn't eat meat." The cultivator chuckled. Hearing this, Yi Feifei felt relieved and took it. Then let me touch it. She held the little thing in one hand and gently stroked its head with the other. Its smooth fur was not prickly at all. On the contrary, it was soft and very comfortable. That was fun. Yi Feifei couldn't help but smile. However, at this moment, the little spirit mouse suddenly bit Yi Feifei's finger.
Ah!
Yi Feifei felt the pain and flung the little spirit mouse away. She looked down and saw that her finger was bleeding. She couldn't help but stare at the cultivator. Didn't you say it doesn't bite? Why did it bite me? I don't know. This spirit mouse is a vegetarian and doesn't eat meat. The cultivator was also stunned for a moment, because his hand was still holding the rope that tied the spirit mouse. When Yi Feifei was startled and threw the little spirit mouse away, his hand also pulled it back. It landed in the palm of his hand, and he stuffed it back into the cage. Chapter 4154. Squeak, squeak, squeak.
Squeak, squeak, squeak.
The little spirit mouse squeaked while Yi Feifei stared at it blankly. After hearing Leng Shuang's words, she wanted to squeeze blood out of her hand. However, when she looked at it, she only saw a trace of blood oozing out. Her face turned pale. After a while, she said to the cultivator, "How much is this white spirit mouse? Since you like it, I'll sell it for 100 gold coins." "I'm selling it for 120 gold coins," the cultivator said with a smile. "It's too expensive." Yi Feifei looked down at her bitten hand and said, "I'll buy it for 10 gold coins." Seeing that the cultivator was about to speak, she said, "If you don't want to sell it, then you have to pay for my bitten hand. I was bitten by your little white mouse and I'm bleeding. You have to pay me 10 gold coins." The cultivator stared at her. He originally wanted to bargain, but when he heard her words, he felt as if his breath was stuck in his throat. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. It was very uncomfortable. 10 gold coins are equivalent to 100 silver coins. Do you want to make 10 gold coins?
Or, do you want to pay 10 gold coins?
Yi Feifei asked.
Hey, okay.
Isn't it just a little spirit mouse? I'll sell it to you, okay? 10 gold coins it is. The cultivator said and shook his head, but he was secretly happy. He didn't know how this white spirit mouse got into the cage when he came back from the Cyan Demon Forest. At that time, it was injured, but it recovered after a few days of rest. Anyway, it was free. 10 gold coins, it was 10 gold coins. He wouldn't lose money. Leng Shuang watched her hand over the money and take the little spiritual mouse. After walking some distance away from the stall, Leng Shuang asked, "Is there anything special about this little mouse?" Yi Feifei stared at the little spirit mouse in her hand with a strange expression. Then she looked up at Leng Shuang and said, "I heard it talking to me. It asked me to save it." Hearing this, Leng Shuang glanced at the little spiritual mouse and said, "There's nothing special about this little mouse. It's just an ordinary spiritual mouse." Just as he was about to shift his gaze away, his footsteps involuntarily paused. His gaze once again landed on the little spirit mouse as he said, "That's not right."
"Ah."
"What's wrong?" Yi Feifei asked. The little spirit mouse was in her palm. It was soft, small, and very cute. The color of its eyes has changed. Leng Shuang stared at the little white mouse and said it was no different from other spirit mice before, but now, one of its eyes is blue, and the other is gold. It seems to be true. As Yi Feifei spoke, he asked curiously, "Why are its eyes like this?" "I don't know." Leng Shuang withdrew his gaze and said, "Put it away first and ask mistress later. Perhaps she will know." Therefore, Yi Feifei stuffed the little spirit mouse into her arms and said with a smile, "Sister Leng Shuang, let's go ahead and have a look." On this side, the two continued to walk around. On the other side, Feng Jiu was squatting in front of a stall looking at the seeds. She looked and said, "Are these all spiritual medicine seeds?" Chapter 4155. The cultivator took out a small pouch and poured out more than a dozen seeds. He grinned and said, "Miss, These are not ordinary seeds. These seeds can only be found by chance. In the entire city, I'm the only one who has more than a dozen top-quality spirit medicine seeds. Fengjiu took a look and saw that the seeds were the size of soybeans. They were a mix of several different colors. It was clear that they were mixed together. She picked up a black seed and looked at it. She asked, "What kind of seed is this?" "This, I don't know what kind of seed this is, but I've asked around. This is the seed of a top-grade spiritual medicine. Look, each seed has a spiritual aura wrapped around it. This is something that the other seeds don't have. If it wasn't for the fact that I can see that you're a knowledgeable person, I wouldn't have taken these seeds out." "Ah, surnamedly, are you trying to trick people with those useless seeds again?" A man wearing a brocade robe walked over with a fan in his hand. Although he was talking to the cultivator, his eyes were fixed on Fengjiu, but he pretended to be reserved. After glancing at Fengjiu, he coughed and said, "Miss, don't listen to his bragging. No matter who buys these seeds, they won't be able to live. He can only trick people like you who come from out of town. Everyone in the city knows that his seeds are a scam." The cultivator's expression changed. He wanted to curse at the man in brocade, but he didn't dare to offend him due to the power behind him. He could only awkwardly smile and say, "Young Master Wang, you can't say that. I obtained this seed from the depths of the Azure Demon Forest. It is indeed a good thing. This isn't a lie, right?" Fengjiu glanced at the man and gently turned the seed in his hand. He didn't say anything, but he seemed to be deep in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. "Miss, if you want seeds, you can come with me to my family shop. You can have any kind of seeds you want there. They are definitely better than the ones you see on the street. Also, I won't take Mrs. Money. I just want to be friends with Mississippi," the brocade-robed man said with a smile. He held a fan and bowed to Fengjiu, his eyes still fixed on her body. Fengjiu didn't look at him and only asked the cultivator, "How much are these seeds?"
This.
The cultivator originally wanted to ask for an exorbitant price, but after being interrupted by the man in brocade robe, he couldn't ask for a high price, but he also couldn't ask for a low price. Thus, he smiled and said, "If Miss likes them, then just give me whatever you want." Hearing this, Fengjiu and put the seeds back into the cultivator's hand. "And these seeds over here, give me a pack of each of them." Okay. The cultivator suddenly smiled and gave her the seeds. She handed him a small pouch of money. He reached out and took it. It was heavy and heavy. He couldn't help but open it slightly to take a look. Seeing that it was full of shiny gold coins, he smiled happily and narrowed his eyes. Chapter 4156. Thank you. Fengjiu smiled. After receiving the item, she put it into her space. She stood up and gently brushed her skirt as she prepared to leave. Who knew that the man in embroidered clothes was still standing there, waiting for her? "Miss, my surname is Wang. How should I address you?" The man in embroidered clothes asked, trying his best to maintain the appearance of an elegant young master. He felt that the woman in red in front of him had an extraordinary temperament. She should be a descendant of an aristocratic family like him, so he didn't act too presumptuously. "I still want to walk around. Don't follow me and block my way," Fengjiu said lightly and walked forward. When the man in embroidered clothes heard this, he quickly said, "Then let me lead the way for Miss. My Wang clan is the head of the 8 great clans in Azure Demon City. I am familiar with the city." Hearing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. The head of the 8 great clans? When young Master Wang saw that she finally looked at him, he immediately puffed out his chest and fanned himself with the fan in his hand. With a proud face, he slightly raised his chin and said, "That's right. My Wang clan is the head of the 8 great clans in Azure Demon City. Everyone in the city knows me. Oh, right. I haven't introduced myself. My surname is Wang, and my name is Wang Yu. I am the son of the Wang clan. Everyone in the city calls me Lord." Fengjiu nodded as the corners of her lips curled up into a smile. A light flashed in her clear eyes as she looked at him and asked with a smile, "In that case, if we were to ask about the matters of Azure Demon City, Young Master Yu should be the most knowledgeable about them? His eyes flickered slightly when he saw the smile on the woman's lips, but he quickly returned to his senses. He said complacently, "Of course. My ancestors have lived in Azure Demon City for generations. Let alone Azure Demon City, I even know where you can't go in Azure Demon Forest and where there are powerful ferocious beasts." Hearing this, Fengjie smiled and said, "Then let's find a place to sit. I have some things I want to ask Lord Yu." Okay. Shall we go to the tea house in front? He pointed to a tea house not far away.
Okay.
Fengjie said and followed him to the tea house. They walked to the tea house, followed by 2 attendants of the Wang family. The street was bustling with activity, but she still heard a woman's cries and cries for help in the alley ahead on the left. She was about to go and have a look when she heard Wang Yu give an order to the people behind her. "Go to the alley in front and see what's going on." He gestured for the attendants behind him to take a look.
Yes.
One of the attendants quickly walked towards the alley and came back not long after. "Young Master, the 3rd young master of the Xing family has taken a fancy to a girl who sells medicine and is trying to force her to marry him." The attendant stepped forward and whispered in Wang Yu's ear. Hearing this, Wang Yu's face darkened and she scolded, "It's that Xing boy again. Let's go and have a look." She strode forward, but after taking 2 steps, she seemed to remember that Fengjie was behind her, so she turned back and said with a smile, "Miss, wait for me here. I'll go and deal with someone. I'll be back soon. How about you wait for me at the tea house?" Fengjie smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. I'll go with you." Chapter 4157. When they arrived at the alley, they saw a man dressed in luxurious clothes standing at the side. 2 attendants were pulling a young girl. The young girl had a delicate and pretty appearance. At that moment, she was panicking and scared. Her helpless appearance and her tears added to her pitiful appearance, causing others to feel pity for her. There were also a few cultivators who had set up stalls in the alley. However, all of them had an indifferent look on their faces. They only watched and did not try to persuade or help. The medicinal herbs on the ground were scattered all over the ground. Some of them had been trampled to pieces. A bamboo basket was thrown into the corner, and some medicinal herbs were hanging on the side of the basket. "No, don't pull me. I don't want to go. The girl cried and begged. However, with her weak strength, she could not break free from the 2 attendants. "Let go of the girl." A sonorous and powerful shout came from the entrance of the alley, which stunned everyone in the alley and made them look in the direction of the sound. Fengjie followed behind Wang Yu. Hearing his shout, a smile flashed across his eyes. It was really interesting. "Oh, I was wondering who it was. It turned out to be Master Yu."
What?
"You also like this girl? I'm sorry you're late. I like her, and I'm going to take her back to the mansion." The man in luxurious clothes glanced at the crying girl, reached out his hand to wipe her tears, and said tenderly, "Don't cry. What's there to cry about? It's your blessing that I like you. You can live a good life with me. Can it compare with the herbs you sell here?" Because Fengjie was standing in the back, blocked by Wang Yu and his 2 attendants, the people in the alley could not see her. They only knew that there was a woman in a red dress behind her. However, they did not pay too much attention to her, and their eyes and attention only fell on Wang Yu. "Zheng San, you are also a member of several big families in the city. Your kidnapping will only bring shame to your Zheng family. Let her go. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." Wang Yu shouted.
What?
"You also like her?" Zheng San asked, one hand holding the young girl's waist. "I won't let go. What can you do to me?" Wang Yu looked at him coldly, waved the fan in her hand, and ordered the 2 attendants beside her. "Go. Beat the crap out of him." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 of his attendants rushed towards Zheng San. The 2 Xing family attendants who were holding the girl immediately let go of her and quickly went to help. The young girl took the opportunity to wipe away her tears. She picked up the bamboo basket on the ground and packed it with the herbs that were not trampled and quickly left. Feng Nine stood quietly and watched. Seeing that Wang Yu's 2 attendants were stronger than the other 2, they quickly suppressed the other side. However, the man surnamed Xing came forward to help, waving his fist and rushing directly at Wang Yu's two attendants. Seeing this, Wang Yu immediately scolded. She put the fan in her hand to her waist, waved her fist, and went straight to Xing San's face. "You little turtle! How dare you hit my people? I'll teach you a lesson." When the cultivators in the alley saw this, they hurriedly moved their stalls to the back. Some of them hurriedly packed up their things and went outside. Chapter 4158. These people were hitting each other with their fists, using a lot of inner strength. They really didn't show any mercy, as if they were seizing the opportunity to beat each other to death. However, even though these people were fighting fiercely, no one used a weapon, nor did they try to kill each other. This made her a little surprised. Bang bang. Hiss. "Wang Yu, you bastard. How dare you beat your master Xing? I'm not beating you, you bastard. I've been wanting to beat you for a long time. If I don't beat you until you look for your teeth on the ground, I'm not surnamed Wang." Wang Yu waved her fists with all her strength. Her punches were aimed at the opponent's face. The force of her punches was loud, and it was painful to listen to.
Ah,
"My teeth.
bastard.
I'm not done with you." Hiss. "How dare you hit my face? I'll let you hit my face. I'll let you hit my face." Bang bang bang. Feng Jiu watched from the side. She saw that the two young masters in embroidered clothes were in a mess from the fight. Even the jade crowns on their heads were messed up. There was also that Xing San. His face was swollen like a pig's head. Young master, it's okay, don't hit, don't hit." Seeing this, the Wang family's attendants were afraid that they would beat him to death and hurriedly came forward to pull their young master away. Master Xing, how are you?" The two attendants of the Xing family did not care about the fight anymore and hurriedly came forward to help him up.
Get out.
"I'm going to kill that bastard." Xing Sen roared, and with this roar, two of his teeth fell down, and his voice was also leaking air. He suddenly stiffened, touched his mouth, and looked at the teeth on the ground. For a moment, he was unable to restrain his anger. "Bastard! I'll kill you!" Master Xing, don't hit, don't hit." The two attendants hurriedly held him down. "Hiss, it hurts. How is my eye? Is it swollen?" Wang Yu snorted, glanced at him, and touched his left eye to ask the attendant beside him. "No, it's not swollen, just a little bruised," the attendant said in a soft voice. He lowered his head and did not dare to look at his messy appearance after being pulled. "Young master Yu, are you all right?" Feng Jiu asked with a smile. "It's nothing." As he spoke, he turned his head around. When he saw Feng Jiu, he seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly lowered his head to tidy up his robes. Then he realized that the jade crown on his head was crooked. He hurriedly tried to straighten it, but when he tried to straighten it, it became crooked again. "Third master, let's go." Seeing that Wang Yu's attention was not on them, the two attendants of the Xing family hurriedly pulled their master to leave. Unexpectedly, Xing San was pulled away, but when he passed by Feng Jiu, he saw her face and suddenly couldn't move his legs. He was stunned and tried to open his swollen eyes to see the beauty in front of him, but at this moment, "You idiot!
What are you looking at? Get lost."
Wang Yu saw his eyes staring at Feng Jiu. She was annoyed and lifted her leg to kick his ass.
Hiss.
"Wang Yu, you bastard. You wait for me. I won't let you go." Xing San was kicked forward. Fortunately, the two attendants supported him, so he didn't fall to the ground. The two attendants were afraid that they would fight again, so they hurriedly half dragged and half escorted him away. Chapter 4159. Feng Jiu smiled and said, "I think you're also badly injured. How about this? You go back and apply the medicine first. I'll stay in the city for 2 more days. Let's sit down and talk when you're better." Hearing this, Wang Yu looked down at her current appearance. She was in a mess and it was not suitable for her to sit down and talk, so she asked, "Where do you live in the city? Where can I find you? And you see, I still don't know your name." Feng Jiu glanced at her and said, "My surname is Feng. I live in the Qingyun Inn in the city." Hearing this, Wang Yu's eyes lit up. Well, I'll go back and apply the medicine first. I'll come to you tomorrow. Okay. Feng Jie responded, nodded slightly, and then turned to leave. After watching her leave, the two attendants looked at him and said, Young master, shall we go back first? Go back, go back. I'm too embarrassed to walk on the street like this, let alone accompany Miss Feng to chat in the inn. Let's go. I'll have to apply the medicine when I get back. As he spoke, he walked out of the room. The two attendants behind him hurriedly followed after him. When Wang Yu walked out of the alley and walked to the street, Feng Jie, who was not far behind, stopped and looked at the cultivators on the street smiling and greeting Wang Yu. He was very happy to hear them call him Young Master Yu. After seeing him leave, the people on the left and right sides also chatted. Well, compared with the young masters of other aristocratic families, this young Master Yu is very good. A cultivator who set up a stall said, Yes. At least the Wang family didn't bully us, and the children of the Wang family didn't kidnap girls like the Zheng family did. Although this young Master Yu is a bit foppish, I've never heard of him kidnapping girls. And it is said that the Wang family has a rule that he can't touch other women before his wife marries into the family, let alone have a concubine. So he is still a virgin. Ha 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 ha. This is the rule left behind by the ancestors of the Wang family. The Wang family really abides by the rules. If it were any other family, children of his age would be running around everywhere. Hey, that's not right. I heard that the Wang family and the Wan family are discussing marriage. I'm preparing to marry this young Master Yu. That's the news from last month. You definitely don't know. The third miss of the Wan clan despises Prince Yu, saying that he's useless and doesn't deserve her. The marriage has long been called off. Is that so? You see, it's hard for these aristocratic families to get married. They have to have a similar family background, a handsome face, and strong strength. The young masters of aristocratic families have to consider all aspects before they marry a wife. Many of them are arranged by their parents. They don't like their wives even if they don't meet them. Feng Jie stood at a small stall not far away, looking at things while listening to the cultivator's conversation. After a while, she picked 2 trinkets, paid the money, and got up to leave. When she first saw Wang Yu, she thought that he was a lecherous, foppish young master. However, after interacting with him, she found that although he looked at her with amazement, there was no profanity. He just felt that she was very beautiful and stunning, so he approached her. What surprised her was that Wang Yu saved the girl, and it didn't look like he did it deliberately for her to see. Instead, it seemed like this was not the first time. Chapter 40, 160. What was interesting was that this person was not as simple as he looked on the surface. He acted out the image of a hedonistic son of rich parents so well that she was almost fooled. However, if one observed carefully, they would know that this person was not as playboy and lustful as he looked on the surface. As a young master of a large family, if he was not spoiled, he would not be such an idiot. She wanted to ask him about the ancient 9-tailed fox spirit, but it seemed that she would have to do it another day. She smiled and put away her thoughts. She looked around to see if there was anything else that caught her eye. Du Fan did not go to the market. Instead, he asked around and went to the mercenary guild in the city. He felt that if he wanted to find out about the 9-tailed fox spirit, only the mercenaries who ran into the Cyan Devil Forest would know about it. When he arrived at the entrance of the mercenary guild, he saw a few mercenaries gathered outside. They were either sitting or standing in groups of 3 to 5, chatting. When they saw a stranger, they looked at him. Young master, this is the mercenary guild. Did you come to the wrong place? A burly man with a strong waist and a strong back said with a smile. He was drinking from a bottle of wine in his hand. I'm looking for the mercenary guild. I didn't come to the wrong place. Du Fan replied with a smile. His steps were light and slow, and he walked forward with the appearance of an elegant young master. The burly man drank another mouthful of wine and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. He said to Du Fan, Young master, are you here to issue a mission? We can accept any mission. The price can be negotiated.
No.
Du Fan shook his head and stepped into the guild hall. When the woman at the counter saw Du Fan, she thought that he was here to issue a mission. She stood up and asked with a smile, "Young master, how can I help you? Is your president here?" Du Fan asked. He tapped on the counter lightly with one hand and looked inside. Hearing this, the woman was startled and asked, "May I know your name? Why are you looking for our president?" Du Fan smiled and said, "Give me a piece of paper and a pen."
Yes.
The woman responded and took a pen and paper from the counter for him. Then she stood there and looked at him. However, she saw him glance at her with a faint smile. She couldn't help but blush. Then she sat down and didn't look at what he wrote. "Give this paper to your president." As Du Fan spoke, he glanced at the woman and smiled. "You can't peek. You can only hand it to your president personally." "Yes." The woman blushed and hurriedly responded. Then she took the folded paper and went inside. Du Fan walked to a chair at the side and sat down. The people sitting next to him were cultivators who had come to take the mercenary assessment. At this moment, they were all looking at Du Fan with curiosity and sizing him up. Some people thought that he was a descendant of an aristocratic family. Some people felt that he was an elegant young master. There were also people who felt that this was a person who had been in a high position for a long time. Some people even thought that he was just a gigolo inside. The woman at the counter took the folded paper and went in. Before she could meet the president, she was stopped by a manager. "Why are you not at the counter? Why are you here?" The manager said unhappily. "Hello, Manager Lin." The woman bowed and said, "There is a young master outside who asked me to pass this paper to the president." Chapter 4161. You don't even know who the other party is, and you want to take his things to the president? If anything happens, can you bear the responsibility? The manager shouted sternly. Looking at the woman with her head lowered, he asked, "Where's the thing?" "It's just a piece of paper. Moreover, it's the pen and paper I gave him. There's only words on it, nothing else." The woman whispered. "Give it to me," the manager said and stretched out his hand. The woman hesitated for a moment, then bit her lip and shook her head. "No," that young master said, "I can only give it to the president." "Give it to the president? Does he know the president? Do you know why he's doing this? What if something bad happens when you casually give something unknown to the president?" "But this is just a piece of paper with words on it," the woman whispered. Because she was a relative of the president, she was not afraid of this manager. "Take it out," the manager shouted again, his anger obvious. "What's with the noise?" An old man walked out and looked at the two people outside. He frowned. "What are the two of you arguing about?" "Third elder, is the president here?" the woman asked and quickly walked forward. "The president is discussing something with us elders." "What do you want?" the old man asked, his gaze falling on the woman. "There's a young master outside who wants me to give this to the president," the woman said, and took out the piece of paper. "Give it to me." The elder stretched out his hand and gestured for her to take it, but who knew that she would take a step back? He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and stare at her. "What are you doing? Isn't it just a piece of paper? He wants you to give it to me. I'll take it in for you, all right?" The woman thought of that elegant young master, thought of how he looked at her with a smile, and told her that she could only give it to the president personally and not peek. She clenched the piece of paper in her hand and said, That young master said I can only give it to the president personally." She knew she shouldn't, but she didn't know why. But when she thought of that young master's smiling eyes, her mind was in a mess. She only felt that since that young master trusted her so much, she should do it well. When the old man saw this, he took a deep breath and cursed under his breath. "Blockhead." He walked inside and saw that she was still standing there. He immediately shouted, "Come with this old man?" "Yes." The woman smiled happily and hurriedly followed him in. Inside, the president was discussing something with several elders. When they saw the third elder bring in a little girl, they couldn't help but be startled. They looked at each other and asked, "What's wrong?" "Humph. Let this little girl speak for herself." The third elder lightly snorted. He flicked his sleeves, walked to his seat, and sat down. Then he picked up his teacup and took a sip. "President, there's a young master outside who wants me to give you a note." The woman revealed a joyful smile as she stepped forward and handed the note to him before standing to the side. Hearing this, the president was slightly surprised. After glancing at the woman, he opened the note and read it. When he read it, his expression changed slightly, and he stood up from his seat. "Where is that young master now?" the president asked anxiously. Not knowing why the president had such a look on his face, the woman hurriedly replied, "That young master is waiting outside. Quickly invite him in." As he spoke, he felt that it was inappropriate and said, there's no need for me. I'll personally invite him in." As he spoke, he was about to walk out when he was pulled back by one of the elders. Chapter 4162. We'll talk later. As the president spoke, he walked out quickly. Du Fan sat outside until he saw the lady walking quickly with an old man. Only then did he stand up. "Young master, this is our president." As the lady spoke, she wanted to tell the president that she was talking about this young master, but the president pushed her aside. "Young master, let's talk inside." The president gestured for him to enter. "All right." Du Fan nodded slightly and smiled at the lady. "Thank you, young lady." As he spoke, he walked in. The lady's face turned red, as if she was in love. She walked back to the counter and sat down in a daze inside. In the hall, a few elders had not left. When they saw the president return with a young master holding a fan, they were startled and looked at each other. "Why are you all still here? Let's disperse for now." The president was slightly stunned when he saw them, and had them leave first. Hearing this, the elders stood up. They wanted to ask, but when they saw the president's expression, they did not ask. They only said, "Then we'll leave first. We'll talk about what happened just now later." As they spoke, they left. After inviting Du Fan to sit down and serving tea, the servants left. Only the president and Du Fan were left in the hall. At this moment, Du Fan spoke. "Sorry to disturb you."
No.
As the president spoke, he looked at him and took out the piece of paper and asked, "Young master, the words Master of Heaven and Earth are written on this. What do they mean?" In fact, he had a guess in his heart, but he wanted to confirm it. Du Fan smiled and said, "I haven't introduced myself. My surname is Du, and my name is Fan. My master is the ghost Dr. Fingjiu. The current master of heaven and earth is Qi Kong, one of the 8 great phoenix guards under my master." Hearing these words, the president's heart thumped wildly. The hand that was holding the teacup trembled slightly. He hurriedly drank a mouthful of tea to calm himself down. Then, he placed the teacup down and took a deep breath before asking, "I wonder what young Master Du is here for?" "President, there's no need to panic. I'm here today to ask you about something." Du Fan smiled and spoke gently. The president's anxious heart gradually relaxed. "I see. Then what does young Master Du want to ask about?" "As long as I know, I'll tell you everything," he hurriedly said. "I'd like to ask if you've heard of any news about the ancient nine-tailed fox, since you're close to the Azure Demon Forest, and the Mercenary Guild is in contact with the Azure Demon Forest more often?" Hearing this, the president was startled. Ancient nine-tailed fox. He paused for a moment and said, "I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. The mercenaries of the guild will also go on missions into the Azure Demon Forest. However, the ancient nine-tailed fox's hiding place must be in the depths of the Azure Demon Forest. It's the most dangerous place. Ordinary people can't go to that place. Therefore, we've only heard of the ancient nine-tailed fox appearing in the Azure Demon Forest. However, we don't know where it appeared and whether it's still there." Chapter 4163. Hearing this, Du Fan was deep in thought. The Wang family, one of the 8 great families in the city. Yes, if young master wants to know about the ancient nine-tailed fox, you can ask the Wang family. Du Fan nodded and said, "I understand." He stood up and said, "Sorry for disturbing you today." No, it's my fault for not being able to help young master. I'm really sorry," the guild master quickly said. Du Fan smiled and said, I accompanied my master here. My identity is a secret. I hope the guild master can keep it a secret, in case it causes too much commotion. Yes, I know this. I will not reveal any information. He quickly promised. If that's the case, I'll take my leave first. He cupped his hands and bowed, then turned and walked out. I'll see young master out. As he said this, he quickly followed and saw him off. After seeing Du Fan leave, the guild master returned to the inner hall. When he returned, he saw a few elders waiting for him in the hall. He asked, "Sit. Let's talk about what happened earlier." Hearing this, the elders looked at each other. One of them said, "Guild master, who is that young master? What did he come here for?" "He is an old friend of mine. This time he passed by and came to see me." The guild master did not say much. He looked at the few of them and said, "About the mercenary assessment, do you have any other opinions?" Seeing that he did not say much, the few of them did not ask any more, but they did not believe the guild master's words. On the other side, Fengjie walked around, bought some things, and went to the appointed tea house to sit, while looking at the various people on the street. Looking at one of the stalls, a woman was selling things. Behind her sat a child of about 3 years old. The child was holding a ball in his hand, and it rolled down the street. The child stood up and chased after the ball. When the woman saw this, she called out to the child, telling him not to run too far, and continued to buy things. At this time, the street in front of them was filled with panic and chaos. He saw a ferocious beast with red eyes running out of nowhere. It was an adult wind wolf. It was extremely fast, and its body was injured. As it ran, the things on the street were flattened and messed up. Some cultivators couldn't react in time and fell to the ground in fright. They watched as Huilang dashed towards them with several men in black chasing after him. On the street in front of them, the child was standing there with a ball in his hand, staring blankly, oblivious to the approaching danger. Just as she was about to rush out, she saw a cultivator leap forward and grab the child before rolling away. However, as he carried the child away from the wind wolf, he was heavily stepped on by a man in black robes. Amidst the chaotic noise, she could faintly hear a muffled groan from the cultivator. Due to the wind wolf's extreme speed, the black-robed cultivators were unable to catch up. One of them immediately raised his hand to reveal the sleeve arrow on his arm, but was pulled back by the person beside him. "There are too many people on the street. We can't shoot. If we don't shoot, it will run away. Its speed is too fast. We won't be able to catch up. Let's catch it first," that person said, ignoring the person beside him. The sleeve arrow in his hand shot out. Chapter 40:164.
Ah!
He cried out in pain and retreated a few steps before falling to the side. Seeing the hidden arrow in his shoulder, his face immediately turned pale. Whoosh! The man in black didn't stop there. Instead, he shot out a second sleeve arrow. This time, the sleeve arrow shot into the wind wolf's back arm. With a howl, the wind wolf ran even faster. Whoosh! The hidden arrow shot out again, but the wind wolf dodged it. As soon as the wind wolf dodged, the old man behind it immediately turned pale and froze in place as he watched the hidden arrow fly towards his forehead. Fengjie's expression became cold. She originally wanted to act, but when she saw Lung Shuang appear beside the old man, she calmly watched. Clang! The long sword blocked the hidden arrow. Before the hidden arrow fell to the ground, Lung Shuang swatted it with his sword and attacked the person who shot the hidden arrow. The other person was rushing forward and didn't expect the hidden arrow to return. For a moment, he couldn't dodge and could only watch as the hidden arrow sank into his arm. Immediately, he raised his hand and was about to release a fourth hidden arrow when he sucked in a cold breath and dropped his arm in pain. Awah! In front of them, the wildly running wind wolf collapsed in a pool of blood. In front of the wind wolf stood Du Fan with a folding fan in his hand. He glanced at the twitching wind wolf on the ground and then looked forward. He saw Lung Shuang and Yi Feifei, as well as his master sitting in a nearby tea house. He walked forward and came to Lung Shuang and Yi Feifei's side, asking, "Are you all right?"
We're fine.
The two replied. Yi Feifei looked at him and said with some surprise, Big brother Du, why are you here? I walked around the city and thought I'd come here to take a look. I didn't expect to run into an out-of-control wind wolf. He said simply and gestured. Master is in front. Let's go.
Yes.
The two of them replied and followed him forward. However, they had only taken a few steps when they were stopped by a few cultivators in black robes. What are you doing? Du Fan asked, looking at them. You hurt me. The cultivator with the injured arm didn't look at Du Fan. Instead, he stared at Lung Shuang with cold eyes. Which eye of yours saw it? Yi Feifei snorted and looked at that person. I only saw you using a sleeve arrow to hurt people. You're courting death. That person shouted darkly as he raised his hand to slap Yi Feifei's face. Seeing this, Du Fan's eyes flashed with coldness. He pulled Yi Feifei behind him with one hand and lifted his leg to kick Du Fan, sending him flying more than 10 meters away. Cha-cha-cha-cha, that person was kicked back, but he didn't fly off the ground. Instead, his body rubbed against the ground. Because of the force of the kick, after a few meters, a bloody mark was left on the ground. Hiss! That person screamed in pain. He felt a burning sensation on his back, and the pain was unbearable. Several cultivators in black robes were shocked. Two of them quickly went over to help him up. When they looked at him, they saw that the clothes on his back had been torn, revealing a blood-stained back.
It was a ghastly sight. Puffed.
That person was helped up, but he couldn't even stand. He spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered all over the ground. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't take it and fainted. Chapter 40, 165. To the side, Lung Shuang said indifferently, Du Fan's kick, even if he doesn't die, he'll be crippled. That kick didn't just injure his back, it also injured his internal organs. If he didn't have the best medicine to treat it, he would be crippled. The fan in Du Fan's hand opened with a schwa sound. He gently fanned himself and said helplessly, I didn't want to be so violent. It's just that this person is courting death. He can't blame me. As he spoke, he strode forward. I don't know who these people are, but they're too arrogant. They used a hidden arrow in front of so many people. As Yi Feifei said this, she saw that one of the cultivators still had a hidden arrow in his shoulder. She quickly walked forward. I'll help you pull it out. This. No need. That person's face was pale, as if he was frightened. Or perhaps it was because he saw the power of Du Fan's kick, but when he saw the girl come forward to help him pull out the hidden arrow, the man holding the fan glanced at him, and he suddenly felt panic and fear. Why don't you go to the clinic and get someone to help you pull out the arrow, clean up the wound, and bandage it? Yi Feifei saw the fear on the other's face and didn't force him. He only told him to hurry to the clinic. Yes, thank you, Mississippi. That person quickly got up and went to the clinic. As for the men in black, they had already taken the corpse of the wind wolf and its unconscious comrade and quickly left. The three people arrived at Fengjiu's place and called out, Master. Fengjiu's gaze fell on the cultivator who couldn't stand up after returning the child to the woman. She said to Du Fan, Take that person to the clinic. Just go back to the inn later. Du Fan was slightly startled. He followed her gaze and saw a cultivator slowly moving to the corner with a painful expression. He responded, Yes. As he spoke, he walked out. Master, look, I bought a pet. Yi Feifei took out the little spirit mouse from his bosom and put it on the table. Fengjiu glanced at it and raised her eyebrows slightly. This is not an ordinary spirit mouse. She looked at her and asked, Where did you buy it? Hearing his master say that it was not an ordinary spirit mouse, Yi Feifei was very happy and said, I bought it from a cultivator who is selling spirit pets. This little spirit mouse bit me, and I found that its intelligence was higher than ordinary spirit mice, so I bought it. Your spirit mouse has 1 gold and 1 blue eye. It looks like a treasure-hunting spirit mouse. Fengjiu smiled and glanced at the little spirit mouse that had curled up into a ball. She had an ancient aura around her, so the little spirit mouse did not dare to get close to her.
Ah,
Treasure hunting spirit mouse? Does Master mean that this is a spirit mouse that can find treasures? Yi Feifei asked in surprise. When I go back, I'll look through the 100 Beast book and see if it's true. As she said this, her voice paused and she said with a smile, however, it's most likely correct. That's great. She couldn't hide her joy and smiled. Lung Shuang watched from the side and also revealed a smile. Speaking of which, Yi Feifei's luck seemed to have always been very good. Let's go. Let's return to the inn. She stood up and paid the bill before leaving with them to return to the inn. On the other side, the black-clothed cultivators who had returned to the Spirit Beast arena reported the matter to their master. After that, they stood to the side and waited for their master's orders. Chapter 4166. Hearing this, the few of them looked at each other and agreed. Just as they were about to leave, they were called back. Wait a moment. They stopped and looked at their master, asking, Master, do you have any other orders? Have someone treat his injuries and let him leave. I don't need people who have no sense of propriety here, he said in a deep voice, his face expressionless and cold. Hearing this, the few of them were startled, but they didn't dare to say anything and quickly left. After they left, an old man standing to the side opened his mouth. Master, should we send someone to inquire about the origins of those people? No need. He raised his hand and said, This matter was done inappropriately by our people. The other party taught them a lesson, but if we ask about their origins, they will think that we want to take revenge on them. His voice paused, and he stood up and walked slowly. From their description, those people are not ordinary people. There is no need to offend those people for an insignificant person.
Yes.
The old man replied, This is also good. We won't get into trouble. Go and make some arrangements. Give the people who were frightened and injured on the street some compensation and deal with the matter properly.
Don't let people talk about it.
Also, go and knock on the people below to make them behave. If something like this happens again, they won't be let off easily. The middle-aged man said in a deep voice. Okay, I will go now, the old man said and left first. The middle-aged man walked outside with his hands behind his back. Looking at the ferocious beasts in the cages of the Spirit Beast field, he thought of the winged wolf that was provoked and ran away. A dark light flashed in his eyes. That winged wolf's speed was one of the best among these ferocious beasts, and its strength wasn't weak either. However, it was killed by a young man with a fan in his hand in one move. From this, it could be seen how strong he was. Even if he hadn't seen such a person face to face, he knew that he couldn't make an enemy out of him. Du Fan returned to the inn after making arrangements for the man. Seeing that his mistress and the others had already sat down at the table and were chatting, he walked up to them and said, Mistress, that cultivator has an old injury on his leg. He was stepped on and his old injury was triggered, but we've already applied medicine and sent him back. He'll be fine after a few days of rest. All right, have a seat. Feng Jiu gestured. Master, do you know that person? Yi Feifei asked. Feng Jiu smiled, took a sip of tea, and said, I just asked Du Fan to help him, because he saved a child. We don't know each other. Hearing this, the three of them came to a realization. So that was the case. Du Fan poured a cup of tea and said, On the way back, I asked around. Those cultivators in black robes were from the Spirit Beast Arena. This Spirit Beast Arena is a place where vicious beasts and spirit beasts trade. There are many humans, spirit beasts, and vicious beasts inside. That winged wolf must have been provoked by something and ran out. This Azure Demon City is close to the Azure Demon Forest. It's not strange that there are people doing business with vicious beasts. Feng Jiu said, However, if you have time, you can go and see what kind of beasts are kept in this Spirit Beast Arena. Master, when we were outside asking around today, we didn't hear much about the ancient nine-tailed spirit fox, Yi Feifei said as he poured tea for them. Chapter 4167.
Oh, tell me about it.
Feng Jiu said, looking at Du Fan. I thought that the people from the Mercenary Association would know something about the Cyan Demon Forest, so I went to ask the president of the Mercenary Association. However, he didn't know much except for some rumors. He said that the people from the Wang family, one of the 8 great families in the city, would know something. So, I thought, should I go to the Wang family and ask? The Wang family? Fengjie raised his eyebrows and thought of Wang Yu. Du Fan nodded and said, yes, the Wang family is one of the 8 great families in the city. The ancestor of the Wang family once led a team into the depths of the Cyan Demon Forest. According to the president of the Mercenary Association, the ancestor of the Wang family had seen the ancient 9-tailed fox spirit. Hearing this, Fengjie smiled and said, I met a disciple of the Wang family outside today. Let's put it aside and wait for me to sound out Wang Yu's words.
Yes.
Du Fan answered. Seeing the waiter serve the food and wine, he didn't say anything more. Let's eat first. We're not in a hurry to enter the Cyan Demon Forest. Let's rest here and prepare the information and things we need. Fengjie said, picking up the chopsticks and eating a piece of meat. On the other side, as soon as Wang Yu returned to the mansion, she was stopped by the steward before she had time to apply medicine. First, young master, the family head is looking for you. Hearing this, Wang Yu covered her eyes and said, Don't you see that I'm in a mess now with injuries on my face? Can I go to see my father like this? She walked inside and said, I'll apply medicine and change clothes first. But the family head said you should go to see him as soon as you come back. The steward caught up and said, The family head is very angry. First, young master, you'd better go now. Hearing this, Wang Yu stopped and asked, Why is he angry? I didn't provoke him these 2 days. Seeing this, the steward sighed helplessly, stepped forward and whispered, The family head of the Zeng family came with 3rd young master Zeng. Now they are waiting in the hall, asking for an explanation. TSK. This Zeng San couldn't beat me, so he called his father over to our house to demand an explanation? Alright, I'll go talk to them. He sneered and walked towards the hall. At this time, in the hall, Patriarch Zeng looked at Patriarch Wang with a dark face and said, This is outrageous. Look at what your son has done to my son. If you don't give me an explanation today, I won't let this matter go. The Wang family head took a sip of tea and said, Brother Zeng, don't be angry. In fact, this is a matter between the children. Let the children solve it. Fighting is quite normal for young people, right? What's more, my son hasn't returned yet, so I don't know what the situation is. You can't just say whatever you want, right? What do you mean? Are you saying that the Zeng family is in the wrong? Did my son deserve to be hit? Does he deserve to be beaten like this? The head of the Zeng family slammed his hand on the table and stood up angrily, glaring at the head of the Wang family. What's going on? Why are you slamming the table in my Wang family's territory? Isn't this Uncle Zeng? I haven't seen you for a long time. You look a lot older. Wang Yu, who was in a mess, came in with a sloppy look. Chapter 40, 168. Father, I was going to come back after applying medicine and changing my clothes. After all, I'm an adult. It's not good to fight with Zeng San like this, but I didn't expect that Zeng San would call his father to come to our house. So I didn't even have time to apply medicine or change my clothes. Wang Yu said, tugging at her clothes. She walked to the side and sat down. She glanced at Zeng San, who still looked the same without any medicine, and laughed. Zeng San, you've given your Zeng family too much face. How could you ask your father to step in? Even if you don't feel ashamed, I feel ashamed for you. You. Zeng San pointed at him angrily. His eyes were swollen, leaving only a small slit. You can't be so presumptuous in front of the guests. The head of the Wang family shouted softly. After glancing at him, he said to the head of the Zeng family, Brother Zeng, you see that my son is also injured. I see that both of them are like this. This is also a matter of the younger generation. Can we just let it go? Let it go?
Can it be?
Can it be let go? My son said that he saw a lady and your son tried to snatch her away. That's why the two of them got into a fight. Tell me, who's in the wrong here? If you want to let it go, let Wang Yu apologize. The head of the Zeng family shouted and stared at Wang Yu angrily. Is this the case? You and Zeng Sin fought for a girl? The head of the Wang family asked with a frown. Of course not, father. It's not like that. Wang Yu said, and then said to the head of the Zeng family, Uncle Zeng, this is the case. I was going to have tea with a friend who knew that Zeng San wanted to take a girl away by force in the alley. The girl cried and begged to go home and let him let her go, but Zeng San still wanted to take her away by force. As he said this, he grinned, and this grin pulled at the wounds on his face, and he couldn't help but cry out, You all know me. I can't stand this kind of bullying of the weak, so I went up to ask Zeng San to let that girl go. In any case, we are also the young masters of aristocratic families, right? Isn't it easy to get a girl? You can't rob her like this. If this were to spread, our clan would lose all face. Well, I was thinking that Uncle Zeng and our family are old family friends. If I didn't run into this matter, it would have been fine. But since I ran into it, of course I can't let Zeng San ruin Uncle Zeng's reputation like this, right? I didn't want people to say that Uncle Zeng didn't teach his son well, so I tried to persuade him. Who would have thought that he wouldn't listen and started to hit me? In order to defend himself, I could only fight back. Now I was injured all over. He really didn't know how to appreciate good intentions. It's hard to be a good person these days. Listening to him talking alone, Zeng San was so angry that he glared at him. Although things were like what he said, it was not entirely like that. But Wang Yu, this little bastard, was just pretending. He was so angry that he could not speak. She heard Wang Yu say that she had lost all her face and said that she had not taught her son well. The face of the head of the Zeng family was extremely ugly. With a dark face, he stared at Wang Yu for a long time and then looked at his son. He asked in a calm voice, Why is what he said different from what you said? Didn't you promise me again and again that it was he who started it first and wanted to take the girl away from you? Father, he is lying. Chapter 40:169. As soon as he finished speaking, he glared angrily at the two guards beside him and asked, Tell me honestly, is it really like what he said it is? If you lie again, I'll break your legs. The two guards were shocked and quickly knelt down. Yes, it was young master who said that. We were just idiots. He was enraged. He stepped forward and kicked the two of them, directly sending them flying. Brother Zeng, it's not a big deal. Let's forget about it. I won't argue with the children. The Wang family head said with a smile. The Zeng family head's face darkened. He turned back and bowed. I'll go back and teach my unfilial son a lesson.
Goodbye.
As he spoke, he grabbed his son with one hand and strode out. Wang Yu saw this, shook his head and sighed. If the Zeng family head doesn't change his impatient temper, he'll bring trouble to the Zeng family. He didn't even ask clearly before coming here. Is there no one else in the Zeng family? How can they let someone else be the family head? Aren't they afraid of ruining the Zeng family? The Wang family had stepped forward and pulled his son's ear. Why do you care about other people's family matters? Can't you give me one less day of trouble? Ouch! 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 Father, let go. I'm not a child. It's ugly for you to pull my ear like this. He bent over and gasped. You know it's ugly? Do you know that ever since your grandfather's strength regressed due to his injuries, our Wang clan's position in the 8 great clans has been declining day by day? Otherwise, do you think the Zeng clan would come knocking on our door for such a trivial matter? The Wang family had snorted and let go of his son's ear. Looking at his son's embarrassed appearance, he said with disappointment, I wanted you to marry the 3rd miss of their Wang family to consolidate our Wang family's status. Who would have thought that this marriage was ruined? Now, everyone in the city is laughing at our Wang family. Do you know that? Wang Yu rubbed her painful ear and said carelessly, Dad, she doesn't like me today. Tomorrow, she won't be worthy of me. You don't have to worry about it. Besides, I'll tell you that I met a woman outside today. This woman. She was interrupted before she finished her words. Okay, I won't listen to your nonsense. You're like this. Go wash up and apply medicine." He shook his head and walked out with a helpless face. "Father, I haven't finished speaking. Why are you leaving?" he shouted. Seeing that his father didn't stop, he smiled and walked out carelessly. As he walked, he ordered, "Get someone to prepare some food and send it to my yard." After washing up, he applied medicine and had a meal. After sitting in the yard for a while, he got up and walked to the back of the mountain in the mansion. When he came to a cave residence in the back of the mountain, he put away his carelessness and cupped one hand in the other before his chest and said, "Grandfather, Yua wants to see you. Come in." An old voice came from the cave residence. Wang Yu, who was outside, heard the order and walked in. In the simple cave residence, there was only a stone table and a stone bed. However, there were luminous pearls on the wall, so the light was as bright as daytime. Moreover, the spiritual qi here was more abundant than that outside. Chapter 40, 170. He bowed respectfully, then said, "Grandfather, I met a woman outside today."
Oh,
"What's so special about this person? She actually made someone come?" He got up, slowly walked to the table and sat down, then raised his hand to signal him to sit beside him. Wang Yu sat down at the stone table and said, "This woman came from outside. I think she's special because she's very strong, and her aura is extraordinary. From her appearance, bearing, and clothes, she reminded me of someone." "Who?" He poured a cup of water and drank. "Ghost Dr. Fengjiu." Wang Yu slowly said these 4 words, a wisp of light flashing through his eyes. Hearing this, the old man didn't react, but asked, "Who is this? I've never heard of her before." "Grandfather, it's not strange that you don't know. After all, our Azure Demon City is located in a rather remote area. It takes a long time for news from other big cities to reach our side. However, some of the people that I've spread out in other cities have returned after receiving first-hand news. Thus, I have some understanding of this ghost Dr. Fengjiu." He slowly said, then paused and continued. "Some time ago, our continent finally had a lord of heaven and earth. Grandfather knows about this, but Grandfather doesn't know that the current lord of heaven and earth, Monarch Qi Kong, is one of this ghost Dr. Fengjiu's people."
what?
The old man exclaimed in shock. Because he was too shocked, the cup in his hand overflowed, spilling all over his hand, but he didn't notice. It's said that this ghost Dr. Fengjiu isn't originally from our area, but a lord of heaven and earth from another area, and her strength is extremely strong. Everyone knows the name of the ghost doctor, and her alchemy skills can be said to be unparalleled in the world. Everyone by her side is a top expert and can be an overlord. The old man took a deep breath and asked with a serious face, "The person you met, is she really ghost Dr. Fengjiu? Is she really as powerful as you say? If it's really her, why would she come to a remote town like ours?" "I can't be wrong. Grandfather hasn't seen her before. If you had seen her, you wouldn't have doubted her identity. Also, I asked her for her name, but she didn't say it. She only said that her surname was Feng." Wang Yu said thoughtfully, "However, I don't know why she came here, but I think I will know soon." Thus, he told his grandfather about how he met Fengjiu and how he found out where she lived. You're very good. Grandfather's efforts in nurturing you have not been in vain. Your knowledge, the way you handle matters, and your intelligence are all rare in the Wang clan. Grandfather's strength is not as great as before, and the Wang clan's status among the 8 great clans is gradually falling behind. It's good that you're willing to restrain yourself. At the very least, you won't become a thorn in their side." As the old man spoke, he exhorted, "Now that you have the opportunity to meet that ghost Dr. Fengjiu, you should make good use of this opportunity. This might be a chance for you, but it might also be a chance for our Wang family. However, with ghost Dr. Fengjiu's strength, I'm afraid that she has already seen through your disguise. Rather than being suspected and exposed, why don't you reveal yourself first?" Chapter 40, 171. "Well, just do what you want," the old man said, pouring another cup of water and said, "I'm old, so I'll have to rely on you. You can decide some things by yourself, and you don't have to ask for instructions.
I know,
He answered, stood up and said, Grandfather, I'll go back first.
Go.
He said, watching him get up and walk out. Then he walked out with his hands clasped behind his back and looked at the lights in the distance. After a long time, he went back. The next morning, Wang Yu went out with an attendant, intending to go to the inn to find Fengjiu. When he came to the inn, he asked and learned that she had not gotten up yet, so he sat and waited on the first floor. Fengjiu got up at about 7 a.m. She washed and went downstairs refreshed, ready to go to the city to see if there was anything delicious in the morning. However, when she went downstairs, she saw Wang Yu, who was dressed in brocade, sitting downstairs. She raised her eyebrows, glanced at him, and walked down slowly. Seeing him stand up to greet her, she smiled and said, When did you come? Miss Feng. Wang Yu saluted and said, I just came here for a while. I heard from the waiter that you haven't gotten up yet, so I waited here for a while. I was just thinking about going out to see if there are any special breakfast dishes in the city. Since you're here, why don't you introduce them to me? Fengjiu said, walking to the table and pouring a cup of tea. Hearing this, Wang Yu smiled and said, Miss Feng, you've asked the right person. If you want to know the special food in the city, no one is more familiar with it than me. I'll take you to the city. Then I'll have to trouble you. Fengjiu said, and glanced at Leng Shuang and Yi Feifei out of the door. She smiled and said, Call Du Fan and follow Child Wang to the city. Okay, I'll call him, Yi Feifei said with a smile. She turned around and walked towards Du Fan's room. She knocked on the door and called out, Big brother Du, Master said that we should go to the city together. Downstairs, Wang Yu looked at Leng Shuang, who was dressed in black and had a cold face, and then looked at Yi Feifei, who was upstairs. Then, the door opened and a handsome young man came out with a fan in his hand and a smile on his face. Looking at the three of them, his eyes flickered. Then he looked at Fengjiu. Seeing that she was looking at him, as if she had seen through his expression, he couldn't help but smile. Miss Feng, who are these three? My subordinate, Fengjiu said, glancing at him with a smile. Looking at the three people coming down the stairs, she introduced them to him. The one with the fan is Du Fan, the one in black is Leng Shuang, and the one next to him is Yi Feifei. Hearing this, Wang Yu was moved. His eyes fell on Du Fan, Leng Shuang, and Yi Feifei. He saluted them and said, I'm Wang Yu. The three of them returned the salute and came to Fengjiu's side. There is a porridge shop not far from here. The porridge there tastes very good. I'll take you there, Wang Yu said, motioning them to follow him. Because he had guessed Fengjiu's identity, today he was no longer the playboy he usually was. He was mature, steady, and polite. Fengjiu saw the change in him today. She just smiled and didn't say anything. She followed him out. Chapter 40-172. According to their master, they thought that Wang Yu was a playboy, but judging from his appearance today, he did not look like one. Moreover, although he hid his cultivation well, they could see that his real strength was not weak based on their cultivation. Wang Yu introduced the scenic spots and prosperous places in the city to them along the way. When passing by a stall, he stopped and said to Fengjiu, This stall sells bowl cakes, which are also one of the specialties of the city. This is the most delicious bowl cakes in the city. I'll buy some for you to try. He asked the attendant to pay and bought a few bowls of cakes. He said, This bowl of cakes is steamed with rice ore. It's fragrant and has a unique taste. You can try it when we arrive at the porridge shop in front. Fengjiu nodded and listened to his introduction as he walked. They came to a shop with a big porridge sign hanging in front of the door. They walked in and sat down at the table by the window. The porridge is freshly cooked, so it will take a little longer. However, I have asked the attendant to bring you some special snacks. You can try the bowl cakes first, Wang Yu said with a smile and motioned them to eat the bowl cakes while it was hot. Wang Yu's attendant went to buy a lot of food and put it on the table. They ate and were almost full before the porridge was served. Fengjiu wiped his mouth and took a sip of tea. Then he said, We ate a lot. I'm afraid we won't be able to eat when the porridge is served. Then let's have a taste, Wang Yu said. They talked for a while. Not long after, the waiter came up with a pot of hot porridge and gave each of them a bowl. The hot smoke filled the air and a delicious smell came to their noses. It's really good, Fengjiu said and tasted it first. Different from the previous porridge, she nodded and said, "It's very good." Hearing this, Wang Yu said with a smile, "It's the honor of this porridge shop to be praised by Miss Feng. The taste is indeed not bad. The porridge is very thick and the taste is also very delicious," Du Fan also said. He was originally 70% full, but in the end, he still ate 2 small bowls. Seeing them eating happily, Wang Yu was also happy. After they finished eating, she took them out for a walk to digest the food until they came to an ornamental pavilion. They sat on the 3rd floor of the viewing pavilion. The independent pavilion was very quiet. They could see the surrounding and the distant scenery at a glance. This place was excellent for both chatting and admiring the scenery. Fengjiu looked at the surrounding scenery and then smiled. His eyes fell on Wang Yu and he said, "Young Master Yu, you are like 2 different people today compared to yesterday." Hearing this, Wang Yu said apologetically, "I didn't mean to deceive Miss Feng, but in the aristocratic families, playboys are the least enviable." As he spoke, he stood up and bowed to Fengjiu. "I apologize to Miss Feng here. Please forgive me for offending you yesterday." "It doesn't matter." Fengjiu waved her hand and smiled carelessly. She said slowly, "But today, I have something to ask you."
Oh,
"What does Miss Feng want to know?" Wang Yu asked and sat down at the table. "I want to know about the ancient 9-fox spirit fox. I heard that your Wang family has met it in the Cyan Demon Forest?" Fengjiu asked directly. Chapter 4173. If there is anyone in this city who knows about the ancient 9-tailed fox, it is only my Wang family. However, it was my grandfather who entered the Cyan Devil Forest. I once heard him say that he saw an ancient 9-tailed fox in the depths of the Cyan Devil Forest. As he spoke, he poured more tea for Feng 9 and also for himself. He continued, "Back then, in order to enter the Cyan Demon Forest to pick an extremely rare spiritual medicine, they did not hesitate to risk their lives and enter the depths of the forest. When they were attacked by ferocious beasts and had nowhere to go, a snow-white little 9-tailed spiritual fox appeared. I heard from my grandfather that the little 9-tailed spiritual fox jumped onto a big tree and roared a few times on the branch. The surrounding ferocious beasts that attacked them were scared and fled in all directions. It was also because they met the 9-tailed spiritual fox that my grandfather and the others survived." Hearing this, Fengjiu seemed to be thinking about something. He rubbed the teacup with one hand, and no one knew what he was thinking. "Does it really have 9 tails?" Du Fan asked. "Yes, an ordinary spiritual fox has only 1 tail, but that spiritual fox has 9 tails. Therefore, my grandfather believed that it was the ancient 9-tailed fox. Moreover, even the extremely ferocious ominous beasts at the divine beast level were afraid of it. Except for the ancient 9-tailed fox, there is nothing else." Wang Yu said affirmatively. "The Cyan Devil Forest is so big that it is not easy to find the ancient 9-tailed fox in the depths." Fengjiu said, looking at Wang Yu and asked, "Did your grandfather have a map when he went in?" Wang Yu paused and said, "I don't know. I have to go back and ask my grandfather. Moreover, that was 10 years ago." Then, she looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Do you want to catch the ancient 9-tailed fox?" "Yes." Fengjiu smiled and said, "I heard that the ancient 9-tailed fox appeared in the Cyan Devil Forest, so I want to catch it for my daughter as a contract beast." Listening to her casual and confident words, Wang Yu could not help but say, "But as far as I know, the ancient 9-tailed spirit fox comes and goes like a ghost. For so many years, except for my grandfather, no one else has seen it. After so many years, I don't know if the ancient 9-tailed spirit fox is still there." "Didn't you say that your grandfather met a little spirit fox back then?" "It's only been 10 years, so he might not be an adult. I think he should still be in the Azure Devil Forest, Fengjiu said as he looked into the distance. Seeing this, Wang Yu said, "Why don't you come back to the Wang family with me? I'll have my grandfather meet you." As he spoke, he thought for a moment and said, "How about this? Aren't you going to stay in the city for a few days? Why don't you stay in my Wang family? If you want peace and quiet, I can set aside a quiet courtyard for you to stay in. No one will disturb you." Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows slightly, and a faint light flashed in her clear eyes. She looked at him and asked with a chuckle, "When did you guess our identity?" This was only the second time they had met today, and this second time it was as if he had changed into a different person. He was no longer the hedonistic son of a rich family. Although he had tried his best to be calm and steady, the reverence in his words and actions still let her know that he had guessed their identities. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.